Toxic, aka Annika, and welcome to my channel. Very happy to see you here. And this time we are now cracking on with the second part of our coloring on acrylic wash series, which might not be the last. Today we are doing some pencil coloring, but before I get to that, I kind of show you something. Okay, this is where I mix my acrylic washes. In the previous video, you saw very clearly how much I mixed, and this is how much there's still left. And I told you how easy it is to get the paint off. Now when it dries, some of it is still fresh, but when it dries, see, it pops off like that. It peels off. The blue might be, yeah, see, the blue just peeled off as well. And what's left there, you can just swipe with a baby wipe. And that's why I love working in this little popper palette. And also, you can see how tiny they look, how little it looks like you have of the wash. Now the wash I mixed up, I did the base for this portrait, which is the one we will be coloring today. I based Loki here, just the face, but yeah, I put base on Loki and some kind of a pink shading also, kind of to give skin a bit life. I put a full base onto Isis. Where did I lose her? Here. That was full base on Isis. That's all her. I also had paint left, so I was like, okay, I'm going to toss some base here. So I put, base onto some parts of this image. There's face and the cape and the skull and the frog and the snake. I still had some base left, so I put the base here as well, the sky and the grass. And the grass on this image. So you can see how far that little amount of wash stretches. But we will stick with this book now. I moved the work now to the angle where it's a bit easier to see the pencil work. And today we're working with Prismacolor pencils because I thought, for my first choice, my first portrait, on the acrylic wash, I will choose pencils that most of people have, or at least know of or have some selection of. So Prismacolors were kind of the obvious choice because they are better on this base than polychromos, which would have been the other kind of a set of pencils that a lot of people do have. So what pencils do I have here? I have mineral orange, I have pink, I have henna, mahogany red, peach, clay rose, and I forgot to take the light peach as well. That only will come into the play at the very end. And then, of course, the must-have, the Prismacolor white. I might use some of them very little, and some of them I might omit at all. Because she is kind of a bit manga-ish and cartoonish, I will, kind of do a fairly simplified skin. So, it's not going to be very much going into the sculpting the face, kind of just give it a bit of a shape here and there and, declare it done, not get it too complicated. So we take the mahogany red first, and where the hair strands kind of are covering the forehead into the very kind of corners here where there's going to be absolute shadow. There's not going to be much of a skin color showing there. We'll put a little bit of that dark. When you're working on acrylic base, don't count on being able to do many complicated layers. It is better to work from dark to light, and it is easier to work with a soft pencil that you can just blend out. Although it is possible to work with all sorts of pencils. I have done things on acrylic base with Brutfuner skin color pencils, with Black Widows, with Lightfasts, with Polychromas. Pretty much anything goes. So we kind of created shadow now for the forehead. So I'm going to also give kind of a shadow or definition around the eye. I'm doing with very light touch. You see, I'm not pressing very hard. So I'm just going to create an outline for the eye. So I'm going to come even more in here. And I'm not going to try anything anatomically correct here, okay? Because this is, you know, little cartoon girl. She is not, it's not necessary to have her anatomically correct. So I'm creating something under her nose. So that's defined. Something here in the corner of the eye and face, because that part is probably going to be the shadow. So something like this. And then bring in the shadow a little bit more down even. Creating a little circle here on the nose, which, you know, we'll do something later on. Something underneath her lip. Like basically the dip between lip and the chin. Something here. Something at her neck here. And this can be pretty dark. Neck is going to be fairly dark. And I'm also going to give a very narrow stripe of shadow here where her hair is covering her face. And I'm going to put the same thing here into the ear, because the ear is going to have, this part of the ear is going to be pink, but to give it this illusion of depth, we'll put down a bit of mahogany red, and then move to red, and then eventually I'll move to green there. Okay, so that's done. And maybe a little bit here. So I'm not doing the big, you know, main shadows with that one. I am just doing the darkest places, or kind of the places that needed some defining, like the eye here. Okay. Because the eye, Camilla D'Errico's eyes are very kind of a sketchy. They're not really defined. And some people just leave the pupils. I don't want them. So you can see the eye here. So I want this part here to be in the shadow of her face. Okay. And I think I'm gonna leave it like that. And then I'm going to do now more shadows with henna. And I'm starting to bring everything down a bit. I rarely really work with very conventional kind of a like portrait or skin colors, you know, what are perceived as, you know, your typical skin colors if in the sets. Skin can be created with essentially any colors, to be honest, you know, as long as you have even primaries, you can create the colors with kind of careful glazing and, you know, layers and layers and layers. But I like to work with kind of a deep purples and then neutralizing them with different ochres and creams a lot. But sure, no. In this case, we're working with a fairly conventional. So we're bringing henna now up like this, creating this darkness around her eyes. And kind of just putting the pencil down, and where we want more of it, kind of keep going, and then soften the pressure on the pencil to create this hazy line here. Okay. And here is going to be kind of dip in her face. So I like to kind of create this kind of a darker area here. Bringing that down a little bit more. Giving some underneath her eyes as well. There's always a little bit of a kind of a darkness or redness there. Okay, and then go into the lip, creating here kind of a shadow, bringing it up, leaving tiny bit of kind of an untouched area here. Here. And as you can see, I'm working with Prismas pretty much like usual. Prismas, or you know, any more or less soft pencils will stick or work on the acrylic paint really well, and they will go over, like even light colors will show up very well even on, you know, kind of like darker colors after the acrylic washes down. Okay, so I want to bring some color here as well, some shadow, some shape. Don't worry if it doesn't look, you know, super smooth. Afterwards I blend it all out. So we're going to bring it more here, soften the edges. Now, once again, this little thing. Okay. Now I'll bring in a little bit of pink. Just bring it out into her cheeks, kind of on top, you know, underneath her eyes as well. Once again, there is always some pinkness, pinkness there. Also her chin area, give it a bit of pink. Soften the edges with the pink. Put some into the neck as well. I will now warm slightly the kind of this mineral orange. I will only touch the dark areas with it, just very, very slightly, if I want to warm them tiny bit, and I do. I do want my shadows a bit cooler, but I wanted to give them some warmth and neutralize them a bit, kind of take away a bit the redness. This area wants kind of a stronger shadow here, so I'm just going to put something here. But, you know, that can be adjusted as we go on. So here, and you can see how well the Prismacolors are going onto the acrylic wash. And I apologize because a lot of people have understood that I'm saying gouache. It's a wash. I'm saying it badly. I guess it's my kind of an accent or the way I pronounce the word wash. It's not gouache, it's wash. It's acrylic wash. It's diluted, matte acrylic paint. That is the base for these images. And we're using it because we want to either avoid, no, if the paper doesn't like water very much, we want to avoid anything going through the paper, or sometimes, you know, it's really good to use if the paper is not good, like an Amazon paper, for example, or Coloring Heaven paper. If the paper isn't great, this actually can give you a bit more tooth and kind of a sturdier base. Let's put a little bit more pink here. I'm just taking the pink down here to the nose as well. So just making sure that her face is going to be nice and glowing. It's super healthy. No, Clay Rose. This I usually use to kind of neutralize things a bit, because it has this kind of a grayish undertone, but it's still, you know, it has pinkish grayish undertone. So if I feel that things are getting too bright in certain areas, I will put that on top to help and neutralize the colors. Okay, the shadow here, the shadow here. Now I'm going to work on the lip a little bit as well, because I want the lip line slightly extended. So this is Tuscan Red, PC 937. I haven't set it for anything else, but for some reason I did it. So I'm just going to kind of establish the line here. Yeah, this is better. This way I can see where I'm going with it. I'm not going to finish anything. I'm just going to make sure. Okay, so I leave that at that, so I can actually see, you know, what's there. Now I'm going to take Peach, and I'm starting to now not press hard, but you know, this is what I kind of use for burnishing things. Parts of it, not everything. The darker parts I'm going to smooth out first with that, with Peach. So all the darker areas that are there that I've colored in, I'm going over them with Peach. And can you see how any color I put down, you know, I can go, because there's acrylic base, all the pencils like this go over the black lines. They totally, like, you know, you can't see the black or gray anymore. The pencils will go over it and cover them. And acrylic base actually helps with that. This is one of the reasons, you know, especially if I have some pages which have really strong black line art. I like to put acrylic wash down. Even if I don't take the lines out totally, it still softens the lines a fair bit. I might add a little bit more pink if I feel that pink is disappearing here. But I'm still going to burnish it out with the peach, or eventually light peach, because now I'm going to switch on to light peach soon. So back to peach, making sure that things are kind of a, you know, soft edges here, because it's very hard to blend out, especially in skin, kind of natural looking, of rough or harsh lines. So I try to make sure that the lines are soft so I can blend them out. And here, and we might come back later on with a little bit more kind of a smoothing, but now I can go in with light peach. And this is now to kind of go over everything, especially the kind of lighter areas. And as you can see, my light peach is getting very tired. I have another one someplace, but I should have really put it into the extender. But of course, you know, I didn't. So, shoulda, woulda, coulda. And I keep going over everything. And now I am literally smoothing. I might put some, you know, dark, little bit of dark back afterwards, and, you know, bring in some more highlight. Okay, now I'm coming back with henna. You know, if something has become lost, some darkness while burnishing, you know, the eye, kind of establishing those lines here again. Let me get my fancy brush and kind of making sure that the nose is nose shaped. I like to make a little bottom there, but I might kind of smooth it out a little bit more with Prisma. But I like to make tiny in the bottom nose. But I'm going to lighten it with Prisma like this, so it wouldn't be so harsh. So I'm smoothing some lines with Prisma White. Okay, I'm going to add some more henna here, bringing it up. Do we need more shadow underneath the nose? Maybe a little bit. I'm going to give it hazy kind of a shadow, and then bring it and just burnish it out or blend it out with light peach, so it would be smoother. Do the same with these lines, kind of go over them with light peach. And with white Prismacolor, I usually like to kind of go up a little bit here, so you have this slight illusion of the bridge of the nose. Now, if you want to, you can do the little dip at the lip, because it's not really, you know, you could put little dip here, but because it's not really anatomically correct face, it's not that important. And I'm not making it, you know, conventional either. I just brought it a tiny bit down, so there could be that little dip in the nose. Okay, now next thing to do, oh, actually the eyes, I want to kind of give some darkness, more darkness around them, to kind of, yeah, that's better. You can kind of tweak things as you go on, and also, you know, whatever your style is, you can just adjust it, because, you know, a lot of us already have their own established ways how to do the faces, how they like to do the faces, how they like to put the shadows down. And, you know, I don't think there's right or wrong way. So the skin now, I'm probably going to leave mostly alone. Like, I could burnish it more, but, you know, that would be just a waste of time on camera. You know, I might do extra layer of burnishing afterwards, you know, if I want it to go super smooth. And here I want to make sure that I kind of keep that little reflected light area. And I'm going to put maybe even some white here and a little bit of white into her chin there. So that'll come a bit more forward. And next thing, I think, actually, I think the eye is already there. I made it too big, so I'm just going to bring it in because it's like that there already. So I'm going to change it to this because the corner of the eye was already established. See, you can change things, you know, if you discover something, I didn't go right, or, you know, and you can see how many layers I'm actually putting down. You know, this is working on acrylic wash. It is actually quite, permissive. You can do quite a lot, especially with a pencil like Prisma or Artex pencils are very good on it. Chroma Flow is fantastic on it. Light Fast needs some learning curve, but also work nicely on this base. Eyes. I have picked up some cool grays. I think it's 50%, 70%, 20%. And I also have powder blue, just, you know, not to have just kind of a gray in her eyes, to have something that kind of livens it up. And these are for the so-called whites of the eye, which are never ever white. So first you take your darkest gray, which in this case is 70% cool gray Prismacolor. And I'm going to go in underneath the lashes. And, you know, as I go, I soften my approach as I go. And you can also tweak, you know, kind of the shape of the eyeball a bit as well as you do that. And here the same thing. I'm going to put a fair bit at the top where the lashes would be covering it. So basically you create something round here. Also, no part of eyeball is actually totally white. The reflections in the eyes can be white, but I think pretty much no part of the so-called white of the eye should be left totally white. Now I take the 50% gray and I'm going to bring it kind of gently down. And the back part there, because it's so much in shadow, this is pretty much, I'm pretty much going to all do with a 50% gray, because there's going to be no white visible from there. There's going to be a tiny bit here at the front. It's going to be lighter. And there's going to be more here, because that's going to be reflecting the light more. So I'm going to put some at the back as well. I'm going to put now the 20% just to blend things out. And pretty much everything. I'm not leaving white at all. And now I'm going to put in kind of in all places tiny bit of blue, just to lift it a bit. And this blue isn't kind of enough, so I think I'm going to bring in non-photo blue as well. I'm pretty sure they still have it. This is from my old set of Prismas, which, you know, was my first set, 132 set, which is a lot of it are kind of fairly tired nubbins, and some of them are gone altogether. So I do have a new set, but I kind of want to use that one up first, you know, most of it. So I'm only dipping into new set if I really need something. Okay, now that's better. I kind of gave a bit more life to the whites of the eye, and I might put tiny bit of, because, you know, it's an eye, I might put a tiny bit of pinkness here in the corners as well, and here, because the corners of the eyes, although, you know, anatomically, let's be honest, these are not, you know, realistic looking eyes, but we can still put tiny bit of red in there just to liven it up out. And this is now Chartreuse, so I'm just brightening that part of the bottom here to make sure that I'm not going to go over it and kind of accidentally kill it. And I'm also kind of, you know, lightening that part with some extra white. And now I'm going to go with the grass green, which, whatever they say about grass green, but it's a fairly unrealistic, like this is not actually very natural green, although it says grass green. It's kind of fairly chemical looking green, you know, like you would expect chemical waste look of it. Or, you know, the shades of it, I don't know. And to darken things all together underneath the lashes, to make sure that it's kind of extra dark there, I'm going to take blue indigo. You can always add a bit of blue, extra blue to greens to darken them, even in layers like this. So I'm going to put that in the corners of the eyes, and maybe some bit at the edge here as well, just to make sure that the eye is nice and dark at the top and gets kind of slightly lighter at the bottom. And we put the highlights in later. So I'm bringing that grass green down again. I'm making sure that the edge now, and see now I went over the grass green over the black, and the black is gone. I hope you can see it. I took out the black, and that was possible because of the acrylic wash. Because of the tooth of the acrylic wash, you are able to pretty much take out your lines. For example, you know, you can go with white. You can see, you can put white on top of the darkest of the colors, and it just stands out perfectly bright. So here we go. This is done, and now we need black, and we're going to go to the eyebrows first, and I'm going to do little flicks. I'm not going to do very thick eyebrows here or anything. I don't want them thick. They weren't thick originally, but I'm going to give them a little bit more shape than they did have. Making sure that I leave the gaps because there's supposed to be hair there coming down. But, you know, I'm going to give some sort of an eyebrow here. And also a hint that, you know, behind that piece of hair here is going to be an eyebrow. And now I'm going to do the lashes. So once again, you work in flicks. And you kind of, if you do lashes, you need to work so you work in outwards here and outwards here and fairly straight or slightly tilted here. Lashes are never stick straight, always slight curve, and you know, think about how the lashes actually sit on the eyes. So I'm going to give this lash line here, and then I'm going to come from here. And these ones now bend outwards again. And the same story with here, only the bottom lashes are going to be much thinner and fairly much shorter. So be careful with them, and you know, don't get them. And I'm going to bring this black carefully upwards a bit. And here as well. Carefully upwards a bit, and create a couple of extra lashes here to kind of give them a bit more thickness. Now create kind of a hazy smoky effect here with the slight soft touches of black. This is optional, I just feel like doing it. Now, and oh yeah, need to also put in don't make it a round ball. Kind of go by what Camilla herself has done. It's kind of, you know, sketchy and a bit broken. The highlight is going to be here. Don't create big, harsh ball of black here. You know, have it defined on kind of a half of it, and then kind of almost blend it out and create a kind of a gray area here. And then once you put the highlight here, it looks much more natural. Okay, so we can leave that at that. And we can move on to the lips. Lips, this is going to be Tuscan red. So I'm making sure that the shadow between the lips is nice and well defined. And there's also going to be shadow underneath the bottom lip, or kind of slightly, but not very harsh shadow, you know, tiny bit. And the top lip is always going to be darker. Well, we all know that, but you know, just in case. So top lip is going to be darker. And I'm going to put a slight layer, not to the very top, kind of, you know, of the Tuscan red onto it, and also some texture lines like you would have in your lips. Okay, and darken this corner because that's going to be most in the shadow because of the light, obviously seems to be coming from that way. I seem to have established it that way. And this is now crimson red. A lot of those pencils would be in the 36 set of Prismas. Well, some of them are not, but you know, a lot of them that I'm using here can be found in that set. So I keep defining the lips like this, leave a fairly big bright area here at the top. This is now Carmine red. And you know, at the moment I'm not trying to define the lips yet. I'm just putting those soft layers of color down. And I want to pretty much leave that kind of a highlight area here. Fairly dark upper lip. So I'm now going to go back with the crimson red. And I'm starting to kind of make sure that the texture lines are there. And now making sure that I'm defining a little bit the edge of the bottom lip. But you know, I'm not going very harsh on it. Now getting back the the Carmine red. Here we go. Now giving a bit of a work here with the white. So I'm basically blending out that highlight area, making sure that it stays light. Now taking, for the upper lip, I'm taking the pink. And I'm going to just smooth it out with pink. And now I'm taking, and also in the almost burnishing or smoothing out the edge of the bottom of the lip. And now I am going to take the darkest one, which was, now is lost. Okay, the Tuscan red, found it. And making sure that the shadow between the lips is nice and well defined, because that is what is going to define your lips. So making sure that I'm not smearing anything here. For this work, now your pencil needs to be fairly sharp to make sure that, oops, and you can put in a little bit of texture with it. Just to give it a bit of an interest. You can do that with the bottom lip as well, and the corner of the bottom lip also, give it some darkness. Because there's going to be some darkness in the corners. It's the middle and the top that is going to be plump and light like this. Okay. And we can put a little bit of a kind of a sparkle or white here afterwards. So that's face pretty much done, you know, except the white highlights, which we can do now. So we're going to put highlight here and maybe a couple of extra dots there to have the eyes nice and sparkly. A highlight there, and also kind of very slight touch, like almost nothing, you know, extra dots. And you can also kind of put a couple of dots here just to give eyes that extra sparkle. And maybe, you know, in the corner here on your lash line where there's often going to be moisture, if you can touch it so slightly that it's almost nothing, that kind of brings the eyes to life. And a bit of in the nose. First time, just tap on your finger. Go second time, tap. Don't smear, just tap while it's still wet. And tap. And then you can leave. Okay, very slight tap. Okay, you can leave that. So this way now you're going to have nice little soft highlight. And you can do pretty much the same here. And the wings of the nose. Give them a bit of an extra oomph. And yeah, that should be pretty much it. Just not too much in the lip. But you know something. No, I don't like that one. See, I took it out. But I'm going to leave those dots here. Yeah, that's it. That's the face done. We can move on to hair. We will use 5 pencils for hair. And it's kind of fairly conventional choices here. So it's light umber, dark brown, peach beige, and white. You start, as I mentioned before, on the acrylic base is best to start from dark and go on to light. So you take the darkest, which would be the dark umber. So you only kind of put it in the areas where you absolutely know that it's going to be the darkest. Yes, you could go to town and make the hair super realistic here, but it is a cartoony image. And I don't think it really matters that much. You know, you can work it as much or as little as you want. Camilla's hair has kind of natural softness and movement to it, so it's fairly easy to give, reasonably natural looking hair. Now you take the peach beige and define the kind of lighten the edge here, because as I said, light colors go very well on top of that wash. We kind of lighten the edge and maybe give a couple of stray hairs there. And now we take the dark brown and we just, and of course, the sharper you have them, and the more strands you put in, the more natural the hair is going to look. But what I do is just, I keep rolling them. I don't know if you notice, I keep doing this in my fingers all the time. So I keep working off the edge of the pencil. So I'm making sure that now with this dark brown, the strands that are on the face, that I'm going to give them color, and some, extra kind of hairs maybe. As long as you go in the direction of the hair, which is, one of the first basics you learn when you're coloring the hair, or, kind of any shape or texture, really. Go in the direction of the curve or the hair growth when you're coloring in. And, even if there is some texture left, or even if it isn't perfect afterwards, it'll still look more natural that way. And I'm taking now the light umber. And here, whatever you do, don't try to burnish it afterwards, okay? Leave the texture. Because if you try to burnish it, then you're taking the hair effect out altogether. The whole point of the hair is that, it has texture. It has loads of little strands. So if you smooth them all out, you're pretty much killing the effect. Okay, and I'm taking now the white. See, as I left those areas, when you're putting the colors down and the strands down, it's important to leave some tiny areas that you don't put anything. And onto these areas now that you haven't put in any color, except the acrylic wash, you do those flicks with white pencil, and they become nice highlights. So this is kind of fairly easy. See? But don't do everything with white. And look for areas where there's nothing, no shading put down. And pull that in. And now I'm taking the darkest again, which was the dark umber. And I'm going to give some extra darkness to everything, kind of to give some contrast. Darker areas, emphasize them again, because I took a lot of the darker tones out when I was putting the lighter ones down. So I'm just going to re-establish the dark areas again. No. And I'm going to bring them, making sure that those strands fall onto the face as well, bringing them into the face, because this way it will look much more natural. Okay, and I'm going to do the rest of the hair that way. Most of the hair is now done, and one thing I wanted to point out again is that to make the hair look more natural and interesting, especially if you have now acrylic wash or a matte acrylic background like I do have here, or any dark background, take your white pencil and pull some strands of hair randomly out, and it just softens and makes the whole portrait more organic and kind of more part of the background, as opposed to just sitting on the background. I don't know if you can kind of understand what I'm saying, because I'm not very good at explaining it. But, you know, just give it like some flying strands, like your own hair would have. You know, take some altogether out, some just kind of continuously a bit standing out, some sticking out, and it just makes the hair look way more realistic than doing million strands, especially in this kind of a cartoony setup here. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say about hair this time. So let's do the flower, the little teddy bear flower. Now, one good rule, I'm starting with poppy red, but one good rule when doing that sort of coloring on the acrylic base, kind of remember is, you know, since you're always starting, or at least most of the cases, you're starting from dark to light, the darker pencils need to be as sharp as possible. The lighter ones don't need to be as sharp. But precision work with the darker ones, and because you see you need to kind of create this smooth layer right away, makes it much more sense. You know, the sharper they are at first, at least, the better. And now you can see what I was talking about here. Can you see all the black or gray, how the pencil is just totally covering it? This is what I'm talking about. That's what happens on the acrylic base. That's why I like to put it down if I want to kind of not totally get rid of the line art, but, you know, very much soften it. But because Camilla D'Errico's line art isn't really harsh black to start with, it's more of a sketchy gray, kind of interrupted gray. Once the acrylic wash is down, it's pretty much taking out the lines altogether. So here we go. Let's put the eyelids in for that teddy. And do a chin as well here, just for the sake of it. I don't really know, you know, what I'm doing here or what it's supposed to look like, but hey, let's do something. Okay, and here are the kind of like eyebrow type of things. So okay, and something in the ear here as well, and I can come back later with maybe some darker tone. So I'm just putting that poppy red to the darkest areas. And now can you see that black here? This is how much I can come back with just poppy red, which isn't even white. How well it covers. And if I were to, let's say, to put white, I could have actually done that. If I put the white on top of it first, and then, oops, I just shook my camera. and then go over it with poppy red. See, I can get it very bright, and there is certainly very little of that gray cast left. And Prismas are, of course, particularly good at that because they are so opaque. And that's why I also suggest other soft pencils like Chroma Flows or Artex pencils, which I also find very good for that sort of a rough blending on the paper. So let's see. And same here, but I'm once again going to put down the white first. This is actually supposed to be darker area, so it feels counterintuitive to put down white first, but I don't want it to be black area. I want it to be darker orangey area, so orangey red area. So instead I'm going to put down white first and then the color on top, and I get the color. See? Easy peasy. So now I'm taking mineral orange that I used a tiny bit of in the skin as well, in the areas that I wanted to warm up slightly, the shadow areas. And in this case, I'm actually kind of making it a tiny bit more earthy, because poppy red is essentially like really strong orange. I would argue that it isn't poppy red, but mineral orange is kind of a more muted, earthy orange. So I'm just kind of bringing some earthiness to it. And then also having it in some areas to kind of, you know, give some shapes to the petals, so they wouldn't just be uniform. And next color is, now I'm going back to really bright one again, is called Orange. That's a bright one now, so, you know, be gentle with it if you use that in this mix. And once again, the underlaying color is called Nickel Titanate Yellow, and it's from Amsterdam. It's a beautiful kind of pale, but not too harshly chemical. Not too cold of a yellow, but very pale. I think it's a beautiful tone. So now I need another. Here we go. And we need now something warm yellow, so that's going to be Spanish orange. That's a very warm orange leaning yellow and a dark yellow. But it, yes, does look like certain really bright oranges. So I'm putting it onto the areas that I already have the darkest colors down, and I'm pressing quite hard now because I'm kind of using that as a burnisher for the dark areas as well. And then I'm putting a little bit of it into the light areas. And now I'm going to take the cream, which is kind of very close to the actual nickel titanate yellow, or close-ish, you know, it's less yellow. And I'm going to go over the whole thing with it. And I'm pretty much blending it all out. And now I'm taking white and I'm going over the edges of it, you know, where it actually touches the background. I am giving it a bit of a oomph and sharpness, and maybe kind of here in the corners of the eyes. Yeah, and particularly here, you can see how the edge is a little bit lost here, so I'm just kind of tightening it up. There we go. And I don't mind, you know, that there's a little bit of a line showing there. It is fine. And I'm going to give the bear a nice black nose. Okay, nose shape. And after it's dried out, I'm going to put tiny white highlight onto it. The ear, let's try to do that quickly as well. So we already put the Tuscan red, I think, into here to kind of have the deep shadow down. So now I'm just using Carmine red to kind of smooth it, deepen it, and bringing it more down. And now I'm softening the pressure on the pencil. Here I'm increasing the pressure because I want that bit to be fairly red, and softening the pressure. I'm taking the pink nice and soft, and softening. Okay. And now I'm taking the, let me decide. I think I'm going to take the olive green. And I'm going to go over those dark spots on her ears, so I wouldn't lose them. And also here at the, so part of the shadow is now transferring into green. Here at the tip, softening the pressure here. Taking the grass green, widening the spots a little bit, giving them a bit more interest than just having one color. You know, color variation is always something that adds and makes your pages more interesting and three-dimensional. And here are the and give the darkness some to the edge here as well, but soften it right away from the edge. And then we take Chartreuse and we just brighten up the top here. And we're going to go gently also into the pink here. And to be honest, I would kind of leave it like that if you don't mind the texture, because I like the texture there. But you know, if you want it to be burnished out, let me show you just a second. I would use the colorless blender here, because otherwise those two colors are not doing very well together. So I'm just taking the blender. This is a Caran d'Ache blender. And I'm just going to burnish it all down. to get the smooth result. I'm not doing anything to the top but the bottom here because it's a big area. Okay, now it is smooth. And now I'm taking the white and I'm doing the top of the ear, going over that black line at the top. And I'm taking it even a bit more out, like sharpening the tip of it. Here is the final result. I took some Calero watercolors. That's a vibrant set. That's the set. And I kind of splattered some color onto the background here. So it's vibrant yellow, vibrant orange, and vibrant green. So it'll all kind of harmonize with the colors that already are in her face, you know, the flower, the ears, the background itself. So everything comes together and becomes really fun and sparkly, but still harmonious whole. And here you can see how much it sparkles. Isn't that just so fun? Bonus tip, if you feel like you want extra white highlights somewhere, you know, that Prismacolor isn't enough. They are surprisingly hard to find, but I'm sure you can find it even on Amazon or some art shops. It's called Staedtler Lumocolor Permanent, and it's white. And this, I don't know any other whites that are as soft as this. It's unbelievably creamy. They are usually hard to get as kind of just one. I think they come in packs of multiples, but you know, you might be able to find, you know, kind of a single as well. But they also write on anything. I'm pretty sure they're actually supposed to be, you know, kind of for writing hard and, you know, glossy materials from glass to whatever. But you know, they work really nice. And you know, if you want to give some extra oomph or white to certain areas, this is what you can do it with. And it also is a really good pencil to create a glow around certain things and certain backgrounds, but you know, we'll probably talk about that in some other video. Anyway, I hope you liked today's video. I hope you liked what came out. Sorry that it was too long again. I tried, but it never works out for me, it seems. Have a lovely evening or morning or afternoon, whatever the time is in your corner of the world. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. It'll help the algorithm to send them to your way if they get published. Once again, thank you very much and bye-bye.